Shavua Tov. We're going to take a look. We're going to take a look at a very important psalm. Now they're all important, but this psalm happens to play a major role in Jewish custom, and this is always so embarrassing when I say this, but it's true about this psalm. I daven regularly at Beit Bart, which is mamish next door to me in on Derech Havron in Baka, and it's a Beit Avot. It is a home for the aged, and there's a lot of wonderful people there, but people pass away. So it's not uncommon that the minyan in their shul is a Beit Avel, is a mourner's minyan, because if someone passed away, quite often family stays in their apartment in the building, and so it's not uncommon that we're not saying Tachanan because it's an Avelut minyan, a minyan for Shiva. And because of that, we end up saying this psalm a lot. This is the psalm that we recite at the end of davening when you're in a Beit Avel. When you're in a house of mourning, in a Shiva house, we end davening with this Psalm 49. Now, the embarrassing part about this is we always recite it at the end of davening. And it's like by the time we recite this, people have 1 foot out the door. I actually saw somebody last week, this is when I decided to do it, there was somebody, a very nice fellow who I daven with often, and he was running out the door at the end of davening. And then you heard out loud, Lamanat Seik, Livnei Korach Mizmor. He said, we have so he opens up the Siddur, and it's like, 2 seconds later, the Siddur closes, he's back out the door. And it's one of those things that, number one, the placement in davening doesn't lend itself for people to read it well, number one. And number two, it's a complicated poem. The psalm itself is difficult, but very, very important. It's really, the ideas in it are very, very powerful. And therefore I decided I want to do it, even though it's a little bit depressing, but not all of it. I assume it's going to take me 2 weeks to get through it. Take us 2 weeks to get through it. So next week will be a little less depressing than this week, but we just have to get started on it. And it's fascinating the way the poem was organized. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. And it starts off with really the most amazing line when you think about it. They used to sing this. It's a mizmor. Now, we don't know what the tune was at all, but it's clear that this song was publicly sung. I assume it was a dirge. Some of the most beautiful music. You think of Mozart's Requiem. That funeral music. Some of it is very, very beautiful. It's sad, but it's beautiful. And so I'm assuming that once upon a time there was a beautiful tune to which the Levium sang this. A lot of commentaries talk about the fact that it was written by the descendants of Korach, who of course were Levium, and a number, 11 specifically, but perhaps even more, of the Psalms were written by Bnei Korach. And so a lot of the commentaries say this one was really appropriate to be recited by the sons of Korach, to be composed and sung by them, because part of the poem talks about the arrogance of many of us thinking that possessions and power and position can somehow defeat death. And one of the people that apparently thought that was their ancestor Korach, that he felt that that he was more powerful than Moshe Rabbeinu, and that his wealth and his position was going to actually conquer death, which was not an uncommon idea in the ancient world. Which was not an uncommon idea. And we're going to see this starting in verse Yud Bet. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to see that, well, I don't know, maybe next week. We're going to see this idea coming up that one of the ideas of people in the ancient world was, I can beat death because of my position. That's what we see in Egypt. It's fascinating. They're still finding new tombs in Egypt. There were a couple of headlines in the last few months. They found new tombs in Egypt. But the most magnificent buildings or construction sites, maybe they're not buildings, in Egypt were, of course, tombs. The pyramids were tombs. One of the seven wonders of the ancient world was the mausoleum at Halikarnassus in Turkey. In other words, people built amazing tombs for the dead. And when the Greco-Roman Hellenist society became big in Yerushalayim, there were famous tombs built in Yerushalayim. When you're standing in Ir David and you look across the valley in the Nahal Kidron, you see from the Greco-Roman period, beautiful tombs were built. That was not the Jewish way. The Jewish way was you were literally buried in a hole in the wall. You go to ancient Jewish grave sites, and they're caves with kuchim, with these niches in the wall where we were buried, alcoves, whatever the best translation for kuch is. And so we didn't believe any of this. And part of the poem is putting down that concept. That's the middle section of the poem. But it begins with an interesting introduction after it says, by the way, you should sing this. Okay, I have no idea how to sing it, but okay. The next four verses, you see Aleph through Hey, I made a separate section. The next four verses say that this really isn't a regular psalm. This message of this particular poem is less from the book of Psalms and more from the book of Mishlei. And see how the authors set that up. So it begins by saying, Shimuzot kol ha'amim, ha'azinu kol yeshvei chalet. This message is universal. Everybody should shma, listen, and ha'azinu, give ear. What's the difference between listening and giving ear? And we have them. One is pay attention, and one is listen. And probably ha'azinu, which Moshe Rabbeinu said first, right? Ha'azinu shemai v'adabera, right? He said ha'azinu first. The Bnei Korach do it opposite. Ha'azinu probably is more the physical act of listening. If we were Shakespeare, we translate ha'azinu as, no, lend me your ear. Ha'azinu, give ear. Or as Mark Antony says in Julius Caesar, lend me your ear. Give ear. That's ha'azinu, ozen. So shema is probably more try to understand. And the other ha'azinu is the physical act of listening. So he says, listen carefully, understand this. Kol amim, all the nations. My message is universal. Ha'azinu kol yeshvei choled. Listen carefully. Don't lose your attention span. All dwellers of choled. Choled is an interesting word. It appears only one other time in Tanakh, and also in the same context by Yeshayahu uses it also. Yeshayahu probably post-dates this poem. Bnei Korach probably were before him. And choled is a word that we believe means the world. So kol ha'amim means all peoples, and choled means dwellers of this world. Why is this world called choled? And there are two opinions that are just fascinating, I think. One is that the root of the word is chaludah. Anybody know what chaludah is? Rust. Very good. That rust. this world which deteriorates, this world which by its, you think the world is forever. Even the world isn't forever. The world is, the oceans wash away the beaches and the storms. The world is not forever. The only thing that's forever, the only thing that's forever is Bernie himself. He just keeps on going. I mean, I don't want to talk about Bernie's politics, but he's amazing. He just had a heart attack a month ago, and he's got all that energy. It's like I get tired. When you watch Bernie speak, you get tired. He's just so energetic. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean you want to hear what he has to say, but that's something else. Okay. So the first interpretation is the world which deteriorates. So you think you're going to last? Even the world doesn't last. The other one is interesting. That somebody, I can't remember who said it. The first one is Rashi. Rust. The second interpretation, which I can't remember who said it, but I wrote down the pshat, but I didn't write down who said it. I apologize. It comes from the word chulda. Anybody, a what? A weasel. The world is like a weasel that steals your stuff. The weasels were famous for other animals would put together, all of this stuff for the wintertime or whatever. It was the weasel that would come and steal it. So the world, people who dwell in this world, which deprives you of what you think you have. What an interesting shot on what this world is. This world, which is so wonderful. I agree with Louis Armstrong. It is a wonderful world. But what happens is there are things in the world that we can't expect to last forever. And the idea that the world doesn't last forever, nothing lasts forever, is chaled, is that term. We're going to actually return to that term when we get to verse 9. Okay. So he's talking to everybody, all nationalities, all dwellers of Olam Hazeh. Gam b'nei Adam, gam b'nei Ish. I'm speaking to both the regular people, b'nei Adam, and to the fancy people, b'nei Ish. Now, according to Shimshval Hirsch, the fancy people are b'nei Ish because they know from whom they descend. And as most of us, I know I can go back as far as my grandfather. But you got some people that can go all the way back to Rashi, or they can go all the way back to, King Henry VIII or something, Lahavdil, right? So those people think because they have a pedigree that they somehow have a greater claim on immortality than the rest of us, who the only thing we know is we descend from Adam Arishon. The only thing we know is we're just regular people. So I'm speaking to both the regular people and the fancy people, the pedigreed people. Okay? Yachad Asher ve'Evyon. I'm speaking simultaneously, Yachad, to both the wealthy and the poor. So many people, and I want you to know, a lot of the political scandals happening both in our country and in the old country have to do with some people think that they're better than other people, that they can get away with things, and because you're wealthy, you can do things that otherwise other people can't do. And what we're saying in this poem is no, that's not true. Wealthy, poor, you're in the same boat. And that idea is very powerful and was something that people in the ancient world, people today too, people think isn't true. That somehow wealthy people are different. As Tevye said, wealthy people can say whatever they want and people will think they're right because they're wealthy. Okay? Okay. But it's not true. That's what that poem is saying. Now the end of his, so the first part of his introduction is, my message is universal. There's no one excluded from the ideas 2/3 of which are going to be depressing, and 1/3 of which is going to be uplifting. Okay, but nobody is exempt from what I'm going to say. The next two lines, Dalet and Hey, is saying, and what I'm going to tell you is really true. Pi yedaber chachmot. My mouth is going to speak wisdom, wise ideas. This sounds so much like Mishle, when Mishle quite often introduces ideas by telling you what I'm going to say is smart. V'hagot libi tevunot, the contemplation of my heart. By the way, in the ancient world, the heart was the seat of wisdom, okay? The contemplation, we would say the contemplation of my brain, but here we say my heart, tevunot, is understanding, is insightful. The stuff I'm going to tell you that I've thought about very clearly is really smart, and it's really true. Atel mashal azni, okay? Pay attention to the mashal I'm going to tell you, okay? A mashal is like Mishle. Mashal can mean a parable, it can mean a metaphor, or it can mean a pithy statement of wisdom, an aphorism. In this case, it's more, I'm going to tell you a mashal meaning an aphorism. I'm going to tell you intelligent, wise ideas. Eftach bechinor chidati. Interesting. This is so foreign to me. I'm going to explain, eftach, I'm going to open, I'm going to explain, I'm going to give the solutions to everything of the chida, of the conundrum. A chida can be a test, it can be a puzzle, but the message is going to be given by my harp. It's, in other words, my music is going to help me tell you this very deep truth. So when you're listening, you're not only listening to my words, you're listening to my music, which when you read this phrase, you think and say, oh my God, I wish we had the music. There must have been something, some sad music is so powerful. Listen to John Williams' theme to Schindler's List, as played on the kinnur of Yitzhak Perlman. Okay, in modern Hebrew, a kinnur is of course a violin. David HaMelech, Bnei Korach in this case, meant a harp. But it's like, listen to it. It's like, oh my God, it breaks your heart. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So it's like he's saying that, listen not just to my words, but to my music. We don't have the music. We don't have the music. So when you read this phrase, it's like, oh, too bad. You just feel bad. So what he said was two things. Number one, my message is universal. And number two, what I'm saying is really valuable. I've really figured it out. And so that's his introduction. And now he's going to make 2 points. The first point has 2 parts to it. So the first point, which is 6 all the way through 15, Vav through Tet Vav, is really how stupid the rich and powerful are, the big mistake that they make. But he's going to split that into 2 parts. The first mistake is that they think that their money can buy everything. And the second mistake is that they think they can beat death through either possessions or building projects. And so he was really speaking to a lot of people in the ancient world, because so many of the kings, especially the pharaohs, really felt that they could defeat death by their building projects. And of course, The most famous of them was probably the pharaoh of the Exodus, Ramses. Ramses was, according to many, many historians, the greatest builder of all time. That he just built tremendous building projects that he thought would make him immortal. It made him famous. By the way, on these lists of the great builders of the ancient world, you know who comes in second? Herod. Usually Ramses is number one. Ramses the second is number one. And usually on these lists, it's Horus. Herod is number two, both for the Temple Mount and for Herod, Herodion, and also of course for Martha Machpelah. And he also built a temple in Rome, and he also built a stadium on the island of Rhodes. I'm sorry? And Caesarea, he built Caesarea. Yeah. His biggest single building project. Thank you. Right. Caesarea, which became the capital, the Roman administrative capital of Israel. And so he usually comes in second place. Okay. So what's interesting is the three parts coming up, the first two are negative and the last one's positive, but each section begins with a statement. First one's actually a question, but it begins with a statement, and then the idea gets explained. So I put the introductory verse in each section in italics, so you see that this is like the koteret. This is like the headline for this section. Okay, here we go. First one's really a question, but it is the introduction to what we're going to say. Lama ira bimera. Why should I be afraid? Bimera, in the days of negativity, of evil, of bad. Why should I be afraid? Avon akave yisovenu. Because the sins of my heels surround me. Now we have to explain both parts of this sentence. The first thing is, what are the days of evil? It's an interesting argument. It's an interesting argument amongst the Meforshim. And there are two comments that are the most famous that really, but basically most of the comments among the, the 6 or 8 commentaries I looked at line up in these two positions. The first and more popular position is Bimei Ra is old age. Because for many, many people, old age are considered the days of bad. Why is old age the days of bad? I think this is true for everybody, except for people that age more wisely. But maybe we can talk about that. Other poems talk about that. For two reasons. Number one, they feel like they've lost it. Some people feel, that they can't do what they used to be able to do physically, and therefore that's bad. The other reason is that they start to fear death. Every 19-year-old thinks he's immortal, right? One of the reasons we did such stupid things when we were teenagers is because we didn't think anything could kill us. We now know better, okay? But the Bimei Ra, according to many, many Meforshim, is the days once you've begun to age. I like the other interpretation better, even though it's not quite as common. And it fits in with a lot of what the poem has to say. Bimei Ra is all of our days on this world. All of our days on this world are really days of evil. And they can only be redeemed through Torah, mitzvot, ma'asim tovim. In other words, we're not giving the positive side right now. We're only giving the negative. And the negative part is, if you really don't, use this world well, your entire lifetime is a bad period of time. And then it says, what makes it evil, and by the way, so we know that good people don't necessarily are in this category, but because the sins of my ankle or my heel, Yisovaveni, attack me. So what are What are the sins of my heels? So it could be the things that I do, inadvertently, that the things I do in my life without thinking about them come back to bite me. They nip at my heels. They cause me to deteriorate. They cause my life to be miserable. The other interpretation goes back to Chumash from Parshat Ekev Tishma'un. And Rashi says there, and he repeats it here, Ekev are those mitzvot which we trample. There are things that we know we shouldn't do. I don't care whether you're religious or you're not religious. There are things we know we shouldn't do. But because we don't think about our action, we trample them. The most famous example that Rashi brings up back in Chumash of a mitzvah, everybody knows it's wrong, but we trample on what we know to be right. He brings up Lashon Hara. Everybody knows it's not right to talk behind other people's backs. Everybody knows that. However, Ekev, we trample. We act without thinking, and we therefore, break these not just mitzvot. We break these tenets of ethical life, of morality. That's Ekev. So which way is it? Is it the inadvertent, or is it those mitzvot those averit that we did just because we didn't think before we acted? But they come back and they nip at our heels and they surround me. They stay with me forever. We think we can put them behind us. But unless you really do tshuva well, they stay with you. They stay with us forever. So that's how he introduces. He says, okay, what do you got to be afraid of? Why should you be afraid? Oh, now I'm going to tell you what you have to be afraid of. And here's what you're afraid of. Habotchim al chelam ubarov asharam yitalalu. Those, this is not a full thought. This is just an introductory idea. Those who have bitachon, faith, reliance on their chelam, on their chayil. Now, chayil can mean two things. In our context, it may be possessions, but it could also mean heroic deeds. It's related to chayal, a soldier. Now, when you have a lot of chayalim, is it that you've got a lot of brave people, or that you have a lot of assets? Do you look at the soldiers as brave individuals, or do you look at them as assets? That's how you translate it here. And you can translate either way. Usually we'd like to think of, when we talk about soldiers, do it in a positive way, but here most of the commentaries translate it negatively. Those people who put faith in their possessions. Yes, please.
Look at some of the pasukim as raising a question and then answering it in the same pasuk. For example, the previous one, why should I be afraid of old age? Because of the things.
Oh, it is like that, but he hasn't told you yet what are those things that nip at his heels. That's what's going to come. That's what it's going to get explained.
So that's a general answer.
It's a general introduction or answer, if you want to say it that way. Fine, to what's coming up here, which means you put your emphasis totally in the wrong places. That's what he's going to end up saying. Okay, until we get to the end, when he's going to talk about putting it in the correct locus. Okay, no, good. And with the increase of their wealth, Yahalu, they feel praised. That's what I'm praiseworthy because I have the most. Who wins? The one who has the most toys at the end. Right? That's the famous joke. What's the definition of men, right? They have the most toys. But he hasn't said what's bad yet. He's just said these people, they've missed the point. And he's going to explain what point it is that they've missed. And now that point starts to get explained in verse 8. Ach, lo pado yifte ish. Now, ach here could mean one's brother, or it could be just an exclamation of, like, in English, A-H-H, oi, okay? But most people think that it has to do with even your brother, even those who are close to you. Lo pado yifte ish. Nobody can redeem anybody. Nobody can get anybody out of their final fate. Lo yitain le'elokim kafro. No one can give his kofer nefesh to God. What is a kofer nefesh? We know this from slaves. Kofer nefesh is his redemption money. In other words, let's say, God forbid, in ancient Israel, a Jew went into great debt. He'd sell himself into slavery. We call it slavery, but it's really like it's really like indentured servitude, right? And it was 7 years. It wasn't true slavery like many people were in the ancient world too, but Jews don't put other Jews into that form of slavery. And what happened was, you could at any point pay off your debt and get out, and paying off the debt was the kofer. We take this word, and what do we do with it? We make it to mean atonement. Yom Kippurim, the day of paying off our debts to God. That God totally forgives us. It's as if it never happened, because payment has been made. Payment in tshuva. Nobody is able to save themselves or their brother or their most beloved individuals from paying the ultimate debt to God. And of course, the ultimate debt to God is their life itself. So you thought in the previous verse, I can have faith in my wealth and in my possessions and in all my toys. No, you can't. Ultimately, it doesn't get you anything important. Tet, v'yekar fidyom nafsham chadal la'olam. The yakar means the preciousness, the vast value of the pidyon nafsham, of the pidyon, the redemption value, the payoff, the ransom of their souls is too great. V'chadal la'olam is impossible to achieve in this world. In this world, it's chadal la'olam. The whole world is chadal, is less than that. The whole world can't. Now, this is another way of saying all the money in the world can't buy your way out of hell. That's what he's saying. But he chooses his words so carefully. Look at the word chadal la'olam. Chadal means to be less than the entire world, okay? It's the same word from chaled. Chaled and chadal are the same word, just the letters have been. It's like, this is what the world is. The world is not just a warehouse, a storehouse for your wealth. The world is something that spins and goes on and on and on, and you ultimately are irrelevant to the world. One particle out of the 7 billion people on the earth, your ultimate value is nothing. There's no way you can amass enough money to redeem your lack of value in the world. Boy, is this depressing. But it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be this musar for those people who think they're going to beat death. Right? You just can't. Remember in Tet, remember the root, Yud, Kuf, Resh, Yakar, value. Because just like that, Het Lamadalid root's going to come back, this root's going to come back. It's mostly going to come back next week, but we have to just remember it, okay? Vichi od lanetzach lo yireh hashachat. This is, as Rashi says, bit miyah. Verse Yud is entirely a question. Are you going to live on forever? Are you never going to see shachat? Now, shachat literally means destruction. But in this context, it means hell. In this context, it means hell. Are you never going to see shachat? Are you never going to see that realm of destruction, that realm of deterioration? You think you're going to live forever? Sounds like the song Fame, I'm going to live forever, right? So this is the most poignant statement in this first section. There's nothing you can gather. There's nothing you can do to beat death. So don't even think about it. Yud Aleph. Ki yir'ah chachamim yamutu. That you should see, that everyone should see, even the wisest people die. Aristotle died. Einstein died. Nobody is so smart that they can beat death. No, this is not just you can't beat death by money. You also can't beat death by knowledge. Yachad kasil ubar yovedu. Together with the fool and the empty-headed one, they are lost. At this point, God forbid, I would never do such a thing. But if theoretically we would bring the remains of Einstein and the remains of some regular guy, we couldn't distinguish between them. By the way, there's a big debate about this. They actually preserved Einstein's brain, and they really haven't found anything remarkable about it. It was a little bit large for his size. He wasn't that big, but they haven't, in other words, they didn't see anything physically remarkable about the brain of Einstein, even though they did preserve it. But this is sort of parroting that idea, okay? Ki yireh chachamim yamotu. You have to notice the wisest of people, they also die, together with the foolish and the empty-headed, yovedu. They are lost to us. Now this, look, I don't think that's true. And at the end of the poem, he's going to disagree with himself. Einstein isn't lost to us. The fact that Einstein is no longer, I'm using the example of someone who wasn't a frum, scholar. I'm using a secular scholar on purpose. Okay, he's not lost to us. We still read his ideas. It's not that distant in time that we read headlines and saying, "Oh, this idea of Einstein has just been proven." Okay, that the physicists on the latest rocket shot just have confirmed this conjecture of Einstein. Einstein, in many ways, is still with us. Alachat kama v'kama gedolei Yisrael are still with us. When he says lost here, he means in the general sense. When we get to the end of the poem, we'll see the other side of it. Don't think you can beat death. That's his point here. However, the true giants of history, of course, the Talmidei Chachamim, the Gedolei Yisrael, but even the secular, even the non religious thinkers, all of their ideas are still with us. In many ways, Einstein's still with us, Shakespeare's still with us. There are certain forms of immortality. The poem right now, B'nai Korach, are ignoring that fact to make their very powerful point. But I don't want you to get too depressed. A lot of us do remain on for X amount of time because of our contributions. But we'll get to that next week. Va'azvu la'acherim chelam. And they leave behind to others their chelam. That's the same word back from verse Zion, where the chelam meant their acts of bravery. They conquered Rhodesia, okay, or their wealth. I think the pshat is wealth, but it could mean their acts of bravery and of power in their lives. The word can mean either. But whatever it is that they accomplished in their lives, who controls it now? Somebody else. Somebody else. And often not even their own children. He go out of his way. He doesn't say their children. He says others. Or they. I mean, it's the Bnei Korach. You have to assume there's sort of a committee writing this particular poem. Please.
Korach himself lost his olam haba.
Right. He lost it all.
And others, his sons, literally got it. And they're the immortal ones. We're quoting them. We're not quoting him.
Right. And that's why it's so potent, as I was saying quickly, but just saying it better at the beginning, that's why it's important that this was written by Bnei Korach. Because the Bnei Korach feel this much more so than regular people, because they had a great ancestor who blew it all. He had it all and just let it go and lost everything, including Olam Haba. But of course, we're not getting to Olam Haba yet. We're going to get to Olam Haba. The assumption here is, until verse Yud Aleph, basically until verse Tedvav, the assumption is death is fine. I mean, that's the working it's a working assumption in the psalm until we get to the end, which is a very powerful idea and was the musar. Remember, it's like Mishlei. It's a musar. It's a very powerfully strong ethical point that they're trying to make. So they don't want to, at the beginning of the poem, they don't want to in any way, weaken their very, very sharp and powerful points against these combination of foolish / wicked people. It's a combination of foolish and by the way, especially when you read Mishlei, like I said, even though it starts off it's a poem and a song from Tehillim, but the style is very much like Mishlei, where Shlomo HaMelech holds back no punches, and everything is black and white there, and that's going to be true of our poem until we get to the very end, which we're not going to do until next week. Okay, did someone else have a point? I apologize. Okay, Yud Bet. Yud Bet's a very hard pasuk. It's the first word in pasuk Yud Bet is in and of itself a debate. The pshat is probably kirbam batemu laolam. Kirbam, in their innermost thoughts, in their midst, bikerev otam, in their midst. Rashi, because Rashi knows what's coming up in the next verses, says you're supposed to invert the letters and don't read it kirbam, read it kivram, their graves, their tombs. Now, the first part of the poem, from Vav through Yud Aleph, chastise people for thinking that their wealth and their deeds would somehow gain them immortality. This section of the poem is more talking about their monumental buildings. And especially, we know, in the ancient world, Bnei Korach were very much aware of the fact that mostly in Egypt, but we see it in Mesopotamia, we see it in Asia Minor, that there was a tremendous, tremendous effort spent to build these monuments that somehow represented that the builder would live on, okay? I mean, they live on for a certain amount of time. If you ask most people who built the Great Pyramid of Giza, they wouldn't even know. Jay would know. I'm sorry? No. The Great Pyramid of Giza is Cheops. Yeah. Okay. All right. Usually you know these things, Jay. Okay. So anyways, either pshat. Let's read the phrase both ways. Let's do the first way, which is probably, according to most Meforshim, pshat. Then we'll do Rashi afterwards. Their innermost thoughts are that batemo. Batemo is a poetic plural, that their house or his house, la'olam, will be forever. So what is the house that's going to be forever? Their grave. Okay? That their grave is going to be forever.
What? Grave?
Their grave.